This is Dan. Dan is a family friend. He's 52 years old. He's the father of 7, yes, 7 children, 1 daughter and 6 sons. He is married to his high school sweetheart. He has taken my son and just adopted him at his own. And in this interview, Dan is going to share some very intimate, very personal experiences in his life. And his story is so compelling. I just get emotional just thinking about it. In the midst of one of the hardest times in his life, losing his first granddaughter after only 6 months of her being on the face of this earth, he had to experience despair and sorrow and watch his wife mourn something that they had prayed for. And he talks about how in the midst of some of the deepest pain and the deepest sorrow that he experienced, that he was able to trust God in a way that he had never done before. And in the midst of those dark seasons, he was able to come out with a heart of gratitude.
My name is Dan. I'm 52 years old. I am married to my high school sweetheart, and we have 7 children. And I'm a contractor slash real estate developer.
Cool. 7 wonderful children.
I didn't say wonderful.
But we'll go with that, right? Because we
Yeah.
are talking about gratitude. So we'll just, stay on that high note of being thankful for everything.
Well, like arrows to a warrior, God calls them. But if you're not careful, they're like arrows at a warrior if you raise them poorly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. All right, so let's just hop right in. So define gratitude.
Thankfulness is really gratitude in my opinion. It's just being thankful.
Well, that's pretty straightforward, being thankful. All right, so list one thing in your life that you often take for granted.
Forgiveness is the thing that I find myself taking for granted all too often.
Forgiveness. That's a
Yep.
good one. Normally that's the thing that people have a hard time giving and sometimes receiving, but taking it for granted, that's a really interesting answer. Never thought about it that way. So what is one thing, I know you have a lot because you have your high school sweetheart and your 7 wonderful arrows, but what is one thing in your life that you are grateful for?
Well, I'm going to take a little more time on this one. And, the biggest is salvation, getting forgiven and having my debt paid is something that is just from the God of the universe through grace, nothing I could do. So that's the biggest one. The second one behind that would be my wife, who is the second greatest gift that I've ever been given. And he uses my wife and has used my wife more than any other human being to shape me. But the one I want to focus on, which is kind of odd, and I don't know exactly where it is in the lineup of things, but I am grateful for some of the most tragic things that have happened in my life. So let me explain. My wife and I have 7 children. Our oldest is a daughter, and then we had 6 boys in a row. And the reason for the 6 boys in a row, obviously it was all planned out by God, but my wife really wanted another little girl in our life. And after witnessing all the work and energy after childbirth, forget about even the childbirth part, I don't know what she was thinking, but that's wanting a little girl really bad. Fast forward 23 years or so, and she had given up on having a little girl after the 6 boys in a row, being a little upset with me and God. Don't blame her.
Yeah.
But our daughter has Wren Annalie Farmer, which my wife's name is Annalie. So little Wren Annalie Farmer. And Wren Annalie Farmer, I thought I had lost my wife because the joy, the excitement, the overwhelming witnessing this joy that she had worked so hard and so long for, and it was here, and she could hardly contain herself. And I was a little jealous and a little scared that I might lose my wife. over Ren Annalee Farmer. But Ren Annalee Farmer, God only gave her 6 months on this earth, although being born apparently completely healthy and everything, right around the 6-month mark, God took Ren home to heaven. And the depth of sorrow and the depths of despair, when I watched it happen, all I could say is, God, I don't understand, but I trust you, and pray that repeatedly. And watching my wife grieve and my daughter grieve, obviously my wife every morning, watching her literally with sorrow, depth of sorrow that I've never seen before from the person I love more than anyone else in my life. And witnessing this morning after morning after morning, and praying to God, God, I trust you, but I don't understand. God, you say you can use all things, but I just don't understand. And this was really the first thing in my life that I had actually no percentage of guilt in. With all my other hardships and relationships and tragedies that have happened in my life, I had some part in them. This was one that I really had nothing to do with. And so watching the pain and sorrow, after 6 months of praying repeatedly, God, I trust you, but I don't understand. I don't. I can't hide my not understanding this from you, and watching my wife's depths of sorrow. It wasn't audible, but it very well could have been. He finally just answered me while I was sitting there reading, watching my wife one morning. And he said, "Are you ready?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I am ready. You say you can use all things. How can you use this?" And he said, "You see your wife's sorrow." I said, "Clearly." He says, "You know that Ren is in heaven and your wife is going to see her again." Yes, 100%. I believe this to be true. He says, "Well, that is a human sorrow to another human that will be seeing each other again. My sorrow is a godly sorrow, and so much deeper than that sorrow for my love between me and the beings that I created. And those who will not come to know me and choose to believe in me and take my gift of salvation will be permanently separated from me." And that glimpse of sorrow that you see doesn't compare to my sorrow. And so from that glimpse of into the God of the universe and how he used Ren Annalee Farmer to make such an incredible impact on what I do and how I spend my time was unbelievable. So even in the greatest hardship of my life, God revealed some incredible truths to me for that. And I'm grateful for Ren Annalee Farmer and how God used her in my life.
Wow, that was really powerful. I could just stop the interview like right there and just call it a day. That is truly amazing um, how that happened, and just for your heart to be open to hear God speak to you in such a tragic time in your life, and seeing so much sadness and sorrow around you, but you were still open to hearing what God had to say to you in that moment. That's very beautiful. Is there currently anything in your life that you are dissatisfied with?
I continue to be dissatisfied with my selfishness. It's very easy to get caught up in the me syndrome.
Very true. And that is something that we have to daily ask God to put the mirror in front of our faces to see how easily we can become distracted from doing the things that He's calling us to do.
Well, you're a much better Christian than me because you're doing it daily. I have to do it like moment by moment.
Yeah, some days are, yeah, I would say that too. Daily moment, however often you need it, that's when you need to pull that mirror out. So I guess going back to this next question, or not going back to it, but just thinking about your answer to the previous question, I really don't feel that I need to ask this one, but I will. But What is your initial response to hardship? So, whether it's relational, economic, health, any type of hardship that you might experience, what is your usual initial response?
Well, my response isn't anything other than, honestly, I'm constantly looking for the solution. So I probably should stop and pray.
Mm-hmm.
I probably stop and ask God. But my initial reaction always is, okay, what is the solution to this problem?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of that tug of war of what is my role
Mm-hmm.
and what is God's role. And I'm constantly, going back to the selfishness one too. I'm constantly trying to struggle with myself. Well, what is my role and what is His role? So I don't, the way He created me, I don't want to wait for a solution if it's within my power to achieve it.
Yes.
So my response to any hardship is, okay, identify the problem and how do I fix this? And you can ask my wife, because as she shares something simple with me, I'll instantly go to the solution, and she'll look at me like, I didn't ask you to solve my problem.
Well, I guess you could ask my husband that because I too I try to fix things and I'm learning again, like you were saying, trying to find that balance between my role and God's role and, just realizing that he has all the solutions that I go in circles trying to discover and trying to find. He already has that. So, um, I'm right there beside you, with how we respond to things. Um, Growing up as a child, were you taught to be grateful?
Yes, I was. My mother and father did a great job of putting me in situations. Well, even when I was very young, I'm the youngest of 8 children, and he had my sisters volunteering at a summer camp with autistic children. And so some of my earliest memories are um, remembering one kid named Craig in particular that we became friends. And it wasn't a feel sorry for because Craig and I were friends. It was just a gratefulness of realizing how everything that we have is, you can be grateful for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that you don't normally recognize. And my parents put me in situations to be able to see that.
Well, that's great. Most people um, struggle with that, and having the foundation as a kid really helps you to kind of have that radar of where you're supposed to be um, as an adult. Um, Humility and gratitude. How do you think humility impacts gratitude?
Yeah, it does. Humility does impact gratitude completely because you have an option. Your thinking um, is, you can choose whether you are owed something in your thinking, which means that you feel that you've been cheated, or out of humility, you can realize, man, you owe. You can't repay what's been given for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they go hand in hand.
Mm. So all about a perspective of your mindset.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality of our situation, it's not just our mindset. I mean, it's reality.
Mm-hmm.
Are we thankful for how much we've been given? I mean, salvation is something that can't be paid.
Right.
So when you've given such a gift, it's pretty easy to see, if you want to, that you owe rather than you're owed.
Right. Right. Do you find that maintaining gratitude is difficult for you?
I put no/yes. And what I mean by that is, um, our minds are like a hotel lobby. You cannot help what thought comes into your mind, and you can't, as a hotel owner, control who walks in your lobby. It's
Mm-hmm.
public space.
Mm-hmm.
So thoughts are much like walking in a lobby. And if I um, feel like I've been cheated, or if I feel like I need something else, I can give that feeling a room key
Mm-hmm.
and check it in my hotel. And there it sits, me thinking and wondering. And, getting upset. But with Christ in our lives, we also have the choice of saying, look, I'm not going to give this thought a room key. Get out of my lobby. And so that's where, if I give a thought a room key, that's where it's I do have trouble with gratitude. If I kick it out of the lobby, I don't struggle with it nearly as much.
I like that analogy. I'm probably going to use that. If you could speak to the younger version of yourself, what would you say to you about the importance of gratitude?
It really is a choice. It really is a choice whether you want to think that you are owed and you've been done wrong, or you can think, man, I need to pay back what I have been given as far as time, talent, treasure. So it's a choice. You can think whichever way you want.
That's very true. All right. So the last question is, because this whole interview is based on a devotion of gratitude. How important are devotionals to you?
It's very important. The fear of God, the fear of God, knowing that someone loved me enough to pay a debt that I couldn't pay. Worship of that allows you to see just how grateful we need to be. It's not, I'm going to do this to get that. It's, wow, I am just so thankful. I'm afraid of not responding in a way that is appropriate. And this is the God of the universe who paid it all for me, and something I couldn't pay. So worship of that, leaning into that, reading his word is absolutely key.
All right. Well, thank you. So that is all of our questions, or my questions. And I just wanted to say, one of the takeaways for me from this interview is that in your pain, back to that question that you responded about this, watching your wife in sorrow, and how in that moment you felt so much gratitude. That's a very powerful perspective, and I'm thankful that you shared that. I believe that there will be a lot of people that will probably just replay that particular response because it was very impactful, and it really gets you to think a lot about gratitude. So thank you so much, Dan, for your time. I really appreciate you being honest with me. And again, thanks so much.
All right. Well, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.